Hello, Danielle Carter here, and welcome back to my MBTI overview series. This is part 4 of a 4-part series where I am giving a brief explanation of each of the preference pairs as it relates to leadership development. So if you haven't seen parts 1, 2, or 3 yet, definitely go ahead and check those out. But in this video, I will be covering the preference pair of judging and perceiving, which is how we approach the outside world. And then I'll tie that into the leadership development skill of project management. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. And as I'm explaining each of the preference pairs, maybe just listen and see which one you identify with the most. Okay, so let's start with judging. Those with a preference for judging, they love themselves a schedule. These are my date book and color coordinated planner people. They love to plan ahead. Organization is of the utmost importance to this preference. These are my systems people. They have systems for everything. Also very important to the judging preference is structure. Okay, of course, this image is fitting, and there's no coincidence that the majority of military personnel and law enforcement have this preference. I can't wait to get into the series on type and career choice and how certain personalities are attracted to certain career paths. So just a quick shout out to my veterans and military families out there, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, and of course the USMC. Moving along. Closure. Okay, those with the preference for judging, they like things to be finalized, and the quicker the better, because they do not like that precious, valuable commodity of time wasted. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the perceiving preference. Now, those with this preference, they really like to remain flexible. And if they had a motto, this is what it would be. Just go with the flow. It's that easy. Now, when those with the judging preference hear this, this is what they really hear. It gets real quick, right? Also, this preference, the perceiving preference, they like to leave things open-ended. They're very comfortable leaving things open-ended. So this is kind of their mindset, or this is something they would say to someone with a judging preference. Stop looking for closure. It's killing you. Now, somewhere out there, someone with a perceiving preference is just nodding like, that's very true. Anyway, those with this preference also like to respond to emerging information. And the example that I like to use is, let's say they run out of milk. No big deal. They'll just run out to the store and grab it. Now, those with a preference for judging would not run out of milk because they plan ahead, and it's probably already on their weekly grocery list for their weekly grocery shopping excursion at Tuesday, 5:45 p.m. or whatever. But anyway, the point is, those with a preference for perceiving, they really prefer spontaneity over scheduled activities like the judging preference. Now, one of the differences that I want to highlight is how they approach deadlines. So those with a preference for judging, they are the early starters. They're energized by the early stages of a project. Now, those with a preference for perceiving, they're actually energized by the deadline itself, and they thrive under that pressure. They do their best work closer to the deadline. Now, let me give you an example. So I teach psychology as an adjunct instructor. Let's say the students have 7 days to complete their assignment. It's due Sunday at midnight. Those with a preference for judging will typically get their work in with a couple days to spare, right? Those with a preference for perceiving will be turning their work in at like 11:57, 3 minutes to spare. Now, you may say that's not necessarily an indicator of preference, but if it's consistent that they're turning their work in close to the deadline and the quality of work is adequate or sufficient, I can usually draw that conclusion that they might have a preference for perceiving. Okay, so now If you are a dynamic leader, not average, but dynamic, you will assign tasks accordingly. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? So I'm going to circle back to that in a moment. Here I have Dr. Harold Kersner's 16 points to project management maturity. Now, there are different frameworks and methodologies for project management, but his work discusses the very basic principles, and it serves as a good point of reference when looking at project management through the scope of Myers-Briggs. And also, it's a great tool to initiate discussion and best practices or challenges among project managers, and really can be applied to just about any field. So I really am just going to touch on number 3 and number 10. So number 3, commit to developing effective plans at the beginning of each project. When we dissect this, okay, plans and beginning both point to the judging preference. Now, there's no coincidence that those with this preference are attracted to jobs such as project manager, because there's scheduling and planning involved, but you also have to be able to respond to emerging information, which is aligned with the preference for perceiving, right? Or vice versa. So there's a lot of nuances with this. I can't go into it right now, but I'll just leave it there for now. So I'm going to jump down to number 10. Cultivate effective communication, cooperation, and trust to achieve rapid project management maturity. So let's just break this down a little bit. Communication, cooperation, and trust. How do we achieve this? How do we get there? So to put everything into perspective, I will use the metaphor of track and field. So let's say there's a track and field team competing in a 4x1 race. The coach knows who to put at the first leg of the race and at the last leg of the race. Same concept applies here. Of course, many different factors come into play, such as industry, organizational structure, day-to-day operations, etc. But knowing who your strong starters are and who your strong finishers are can kind of help each person develop that trust for who they're passing the metaphorical baton to in the race. Okay, and of course, all for the greater good of the team. Having an understanding of the judging and perceiving dichotomy or preference pair can help us look at our opposites in a more positive light. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, he is such a procrastinator, or she is so demanding and uptight, we can change our narrative and outlook regarding certain people to improve the quality of work relationships and increase productivity and efficiency. So I will close with this. Those in leadership are constantly dealing with competing priorities. And sometimes what can happen is there's so much coming at you at one time that you're not giving much thought to who you're delegating what. Now, the MBTI is a valuable tool in the sense that it helps you to assign tasks to individuals based on their strengths. And it also helps you to know on your team who you can count on to do what and when. Now, that's just from a team dynamics perspective, but on the individual level, leaders and those in leadership need to pause for things such as training and professional development to reflect, reevaluate, recharge, then re-engage. So that concludes my discussion on judging and perceiving. And also this concludes the MBTI overview series. So if you have any questions, I'm always learning and wanting to know more about your industry, your organization, your specific role. And it helps me become a better MBTI facilitator too, because I understand that everybody's work situation is different. And the MBTI is a flexible framework. So I encourage you to watch all 4 videos before you continue on watching any other MBTI videos, because this will serve as a strong foundation for anything coming after this. Now, I look forward to working with you and helping you increase efficiency and effectiveness in your organization. Thank you and have a wonderful day.